I mean, that's the old Microsoft story. Is when they went and had their original meeting with IBM, wanting to license Windows. That was a real big change in software. Nobody had licensed software before that. The real money was in the hardware, according to IBM. So Bill Gates sat in this meeting and said, "Hey, you need our operating system for these new computers as home computers were becoming popular." And Bill Gates said, "We want to license you the software, our operating system, on a per machine basis. So every time you sell a IBM computer, you get to put our software on it, and we get a kickback." So from IBM's perspective, that's good, right? They only have to pay Microsoft if they sold a computer. Sounds like a good deal, right? So what did IBM say? Sure, no problem. The real money's in the hardware. Okay. The funniest thing of that whole story, though, is they shook hands on it, signed the deal, whatever. Microsoft walks out. They say, "Okay, well now we got to go find an operating system." They just closed the deal with IBM to license their operating system to them on a per machine basis. They didn't have an operating system. They sold smoke and mirrors. So they had to go. They went to this little tech shop back then. The rumor was there was a guy there who had written an operating system as a hobby. Okay, this guy sold little geek parts. It was Radio Shack before there was Radio Shack, that type of place. Okay, and this guy had written an operating system called DOS. Microsoft walked in, offered him $50,000 for it. How much did Microsoft make off that 50 grand? At least double their money, right? Okay. DOS is still in Windows today. It's still emulated through the command prompt. So all their operating systems for years were built on top of DOS. And now they still emulate it so that older software still runs, older DOS-based software. So they went in and offered this guy 50 grand. Well, this is a dude who was running, a crappy little, not Radio Shack, but Radio Shack. Some dude walks in off the street and says, "Hey, I heard you wrote some software in your spare time. That's an operating system. We'll give you $50,000 for it. What do you say?" You say yes, right? That's how Windows got to be. Well, that's how Microsoft became the giant. They took something from a geek who probably wasn't going to do anything with it. It was his hobby software. They sold it to IBM before they had it, and they had to go and find what they sold. Rest is kind of history. It's very, very interesting. I think a lot of people, and I'm not for instance, I would never defend if you've read the biography on Steve Jobs and stuff like that. I mean, I don't think anybody would read that and say the guy was a good father, stuff like that, But at the same time, so maybe he shouldn't have had kids. You might say that, but I think it maybe takes somebody to be a little off their rocker to change the world the way some of these guys did. So you could appreciate what they did as technologists and entrepreneurs and stuff like that. It's kind of just like the Tiger Woods story, right? I'm a big golf fan. I like Tiger Woods as a golfer. I don't care what he does outside of that. I'm not going to look up to this guy as a good husband and stuff like that. But, frankly, he was a better golfer when he was running around on his wife. But, that has nothing to do with his golf game. But regardless, just a very interesting story of the history of this stuff. And, I think both him and Bill Gates were almost maniacal lunatics in their head. And I think maybe it took that kind of confidence in order to bring computers to where they are today. So I really think that's almost every software developer's dream. And even, I know he hates Game Salad, but there has been some really big... there's actually some good stories related to Game Salad that you should look at. I agree with you. The tool as it stands is kind of a crappy tool, but you can produce some pretty reasonable games with it. There's been several success stories where people have written a game in Game Salad and become multimillionaires off a stupid game in Game Salad. So almost every startup business, whether you have a good game idea or good business app idea, when you're in the startup world today, one of the things that venture capitalists are looking for when you go and try to beg somebody for money to help fund it is they're looking for your exit strategy. How are you going to sell your business? Historically, people wanted to build businesses and keep them. Well, not now. Now the idea is, okay, I'm going to write this little video game or something like that, and maybe I'll have the opportunity to sell it to the big guy, or maybe I'll have to go through a couple extra hoops and he'll steal it from me, and then I'll sue him, and then I'll get my money that way. But that is the new exit strategy, right? It's just kind of an interesting world. So if you do have a good game idea, we had a student here a couple years ago. He made a game with Game Salad. It had something like, I don't know, 200 levels or something like that. Put it up in the App Store. I think he made something maybe like $5,000 or $6,000 off of it. You know, not millions, but how many of you wouldn't want an extra $5,000 or $6,000? Do something with that, right? All right, so I think we had like a little bowling thing going, right? All right, so last time we kind of messed with the camera a little bit and physics a little bit. Okay, we have these types of things going. So now that we understand some of the things that Game Salad's doing for us from a physics perspective, I mean, all that stuff that just happened there, even though it was pretty simple for us to get it on the screen, this idea of this actor colliding with these actors and them acting like they would in maybe real life-ish. There's a lot of math behind that. If we had to write that ourselves, that would be pages and pages of code. Pages and pages of code, where Game Salad handles it all for us, as would any game engine. Okay, so that's kind of a cool thing associated with this. Now, what we want to do now that we have some of these abilities, is we're going to turn this thing sideways, and we're going to start transitioning towards kind of a platformer type game, almost like a Super Mario Brothers. Because at some point during last class, I think we had the camera following this guy, right? I think when we had it elongated or something. So now we could take advantage of that, because when you think about Super Mario Brothers, you know, when the game first starts, you only see a little portion of the screen, even though you know the map goes way down there. Correct? So we want to start trying to create that world. So what I'm going to do here, I need to fix my scene. All right, so we're going to make the height of the scene 640. No, I want to make it, what's, is it 1368? But width, I'm going to make 10,000. You know, actually, I think it'll be easier if I just start a new game for this. That way I don't have to revert back my cameras and stuff. So I'll close this game, don't save. We're going to create a new CSC200 platformer. And we'll say iPhone 5 landscape is good enough. Alright, so we'll go into our initial scene. So this guy looks like this initially. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto the scene, and I'm going to change the size. I'm going to leave the height alone, but I'm going to change the width to, let's say, 5,000. Alright. So notice that I can scroll over to the side, and I have a much larger level now. Okay? Now, we need some ground, because you need something for somebody to land on. Because let me go ahead and throw our actor back in here. So I'll go down to images. I need to import these guys. And here's our evil smiley. And of course, the enemies are going to be bowling pins. Only makes sense, right? So we'll create an actor. You can just drag a picture up there, and that'll create a new actor for him. So we're going to call this guy Player. All right. So I'll just go ahead and put Player on the screen, and we'll preview it. And we see the guy just sits there. Okay. Now what we want to do is we're going to go into our scene, and under the attributes, we have something called gravity. Gravity on X, gravity on Y. So we're going to turn the gravity on Y to 100. Preview our screen, and now this dude falls out of the sky. Okay. Now if we had sound, he would be screaming. Because right now this is an endless abyss he just fell into. But the good news is you don't have to worry, he'll never hit bottom because we didn't put a bottom in there. So this is just his new life. All right. So we would like, and if you think back to how many of you ever played the game Mega Man? I loved that game. Did you play the original? Loved Mega Man. The game always started. I don't think Mario always started on the ground, right? But Mega Man, he would always start about maybe what looked like to be about 10 feet above the ground and would fall to the ground and land. So that's what Mega Man started with. So it started with a dude like this. Oh, I have to restart my... And he'd land on the platform instead of fall to his death like this. All right? So we want to mimic. We want to mimic that type of thing. So we need to give him something to land on. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to create another actor. And we're going to call this guy Ground. All right? And I'll put our ground actor out here, and I'll go ahead and resize him. Put it like that for right now. Okay, so now we have ground. Previewed again. That's just very odd. Okay. So now we have the ground and our dude falling. Okay, can't have the ground falling, right? Ground needs to kind of stay put. So we need to go in and we need to change some of the things associated with our ground. So we're going to go into ground. And we're going to go into physics. And there's a thing here called movable. And we'll just turn that off. This dude's not movable. Okay? So anything that is of type ground will not move. He won't fall victim to gravity or anything else that's happening around it. All right? Now we see he's staying there and our dude's falling. Still, he falls right through it. Right? So now we can go ahead and we can put the collide behavior on both of those guys, so that the ground knows how to collide with, well, let's just start by just putting it on the player and see what effect that has. I'm going to go ahead and save our game real quick. So we'll go into our player, and we're going to add a behavior to this guy. We're going to teach this guy how to collide. He's going to collide with ground. All right? So now this actor knows how to collide with ground. The ground doesn't know how to collide with an actor. Okay, well, he's not falling to his death anymore. Go back into player, and we see under physics we have something called bounciness. Bounciness defaults to 1. Let's go ahead and change it to 2. Run this again. Now he's more bouncier. Yeah. He's bound to come down again, right? He jumped pretty high that last one. I kind of want to go back, but I don't. I want to see him fall one more time. All right. So in any case, what we're going to do is we're going to change his bounciness to 0. Now, bounciness of 0 is the least amount of bounciness, but he's still bouncing. Well, can we make the bounciness less? I think -1's not, I think it's 0, 1, or 2. Okay, 0. So, how do we make this guy not bounce?
Set the ground's bouncing.
Okay. Go into our ground. By default, the ground is still bouncy. So we're going to set this guy's bounciness to 0 because that's the dude that our player is colliding with. So it's almost like he's falling onto a little trampoline. Okay, and even though this dude isn't bouncy, like people aren't bouncy, right? But if we jump onto a trampoline, the trampoline's bouncy, we'll still bounce. Okay, now he drops down and he's ready for action, right? All right, so now we want him to be able to move along the ground. So let's go ahead and let's give him some movement. We're going to make him move on the arrow keys. So we're going to create some rules. We're going to say this actor receives the event key. We could pop up the keyboard and we're going to say the right arrow. So, and this isn't on him or anything. This is just the game is listening, and if we hit the right arrow, this actor will respond to that. Okay? So when we hit the right arrow, when it's pressed down, we want this guy to roll to the right. Okay? Not just move to the right. We'll start off with him moving. So what we'll say is change attribute. This player's motion, linear velocity on X to 100. So that's what we'll do initially. All right. Now I've let go of the right key, and the guy just falls to his death. I only put a rule in for what happens if the right key is pressed down. What do we want to happen when the right key is not pressed down? We want his linear velocity to be 0, be nothing. Okay, so this kind of shows us some of the problem-solving aspects of this. Right now, I haven't pressed it at all. Okay, so the event associated with the right key being pressed down has not fired, therefore we never set his linear velocity to 100. But if I just tap it once, his linear velocity is now 100, I don't have a rule that negates that. So I need to go in and I need to put the otherwise in here. This part of it. And in this case, we're going to change his linear velocity to 0. Make sense? So now I can move him a little bit and then stop. Move him a little bit and stop. Okay? Now we probably want to be able to go backwards as well. Fair enough? Go to our player. This guy is move right. We'll steal this whole rule. I can't paste a rule. There we go. Oh, no, apparently not. Yeah. Move left. This is when the left key is pressed. And we'll change linear velocity at x to minus 100. Otherwise, we'll change it to 0. So now our guy should be able to go both left and right. Now, this guy's kind of our bowling ball. So when bowling balls are rolling, shouldn't he be rotating? Okay, because we're going to give him some special abilities. Okay, so not only do we change his linear velocity to 100, we also want to rotate him. And we'll rotate him clockwise. And let's see what a speed of 90 looks like. When we stop, well, let's just see what 90 looks like first, and then we'll... Oh no, we need more than that. Oh, actually this will be, right now, I try to rotate him, but he's getting stuck. Why is that? What shape's his hitbox currently? Oh, there, I got him to turn. Oh, yeah. All right, so we need to change his hitbox to be a circle. Collision shape, circle. Now he should roll. Gotta hit the brakes. Wow. Okay, so we're going to be looking at friction here in a second. Let's make him spin a little faster than that. 200. All right. Gravity spinning him here. All right. So that's rotating clockwise at 200. When we stop, we want him rotating at 0. Right? Similarly, if he's moving to the left, we want him rotating counterclockwise at 200. And when he stops, just to stay consistent, we'll say counterclockwise, but at 0. So now we associated some rotations with this guy on all the events. All right. Doesn't seem like he's rotating any quicker than he did before, does it? Let's make him go at 1,000 now. Oh, yeah, he was definitely going quicker. That could be one of our turbo moves. You can rotate faster, you can just really just mow through stuff, right? All right. So here, we'll leave it at 200 for now, so we're consistent throughout. All right. Now, I'm going to actually move him a little bit closer to the ground. Now, as it stands right now, as we go, we could just fall off the world, right? Well, we probably need to have some sort of way of going up into the air. For right now, I'm actually going to, just to show camera follows, we're going to extend this ground somewhere off the screen here, and I'll put a little bowling pin over here. That way we won't see the bowling pin initially, but we'll know we're moving because we don't have any background right now. We'll put some clouds and crap eventually. Actually, probably it's a bowling ball, so it should be kind of like maybe it was an evil bowling ball. So maybe like an evil bowling alley backdrop. This is going to be a huge moneymaker, people. Wouldn't that be funny? We just release it as a class thing, just makes thousands of dollars. All you have to do is, I think just in your keywords, just put like Miley Cyrus and Kardashians, and people are bound to download it then, right? That'd be a really funny social experiment. All right. So we'll go ahead and extend our ground. Actually, just to make this, well, here. I'll go ahead and change the width of this ground to be 3,000. Actually, I can just change it, so it's fine there. I need to change his position on X to start off at 0. All right, so 0 is over here. hold on. Did the right thing, didn't I? Oh. Thank you. So since its width is 3,000, I want it to be lower left-hand corner. I have to set it to 1,500. iPhone is 00 is the bottom. All right, there we go. Okay, good enough. And then we'll put a bowling pin over here. Just drop him on the ground. Now, as it stands right now, this bowling pin is going to fall right through the earth, right? Because gravity takes an effect. So we need to teach him how to collide with the ground. We also need to set his bounciness to 0. Otherwise, actually, let's set it to, let's keep it at 1. Then when we get down there, it'll be kind of hopping around a little bit, as long as we move quick enough. Good enough right now. I'll give him a little fall height, that way. Gotta get trucking. Oh, hold on. I don't. Well, right now he's just gonna roll right off the screen because I didn't put the camera behavior on him. So we need to add the camera behavior to our player. Control camera. We'll make the camera follow him. By default, he'll push right up against the side of the screen, and so it won't drag until he gets to the side of the screen for following him. But we'll eventually roll past that pin that's bouncing there. Oh man, maybe that's how we do it. He's got to roll under him. Got to have it bounce higher though than that. Whatever. All right. Whoa. We got this. This thing's going to totally shoot laser beams too when we're done. All right. So we want to have the camera drag behind him a little bit, kind of like Mario, where as he moves, the screen kind of, you have new stuff coming up on you, but you're not in this like death hurl thing where you're right at the edge and you're just running and you get to see 1 pixel of the guy before you die. So we need to go into our scene and go to the camera. So the camera is associated with a scene. And we have tracking area. And we want to change our width. Let's change it to a 200, I think. Well, let's see how that looks. Oh, yeah. Okay, whoa. All right, so we could probably even make it 200 wide is probably fine, but we can reposition the camera a little bit. So right now the origin of the camera is at 00. Let's make it at 100, negative 100, 0. I don't know if that really gave me the effect I was looking for. It didn't. So we're going to make it narrower. Every little time I hit back, I always just have this fear that GameSalad's going to crash. So save often. Put the origin back to 0, and let's change the width to 100. Good enough. Is that a little bit better? I really want more of the screen to show up sooner. So we'll change the width again, but I'm also going to do some other stuff here. So we're going to have our bowling pin not just know how to collide with the ground, but we're also going to teach him how to collide with a player. All right. Maybe I need to change the, no, if I change the width of that, it'll show less of the scene. We don't want that. We want the tracking area to be less. Let's try that. Boom. So we just mow this guy now. All right. So we can bump into our bowling pins now, and they just are sitting there. Let's go ahead and change that bowling pin so he's no longer bouncy, which is going to have the caveat. He'll no longer bounce off the ground, but our bowling pin will do what? How is he going to bounce off us? Our bounciness is 0, right? I'm telling you, this is exhilarating stuff right here. All right, so we're going to change our bowling pins. Bounciness to 0. So now he'll fall to the ground. No harm, no foul. We're also going to change his linear velocity on X to be minus 100. So he's going to be coming at us now. So think about your Mario games. You know, you have your, the turtles are coming at you. So this guy's going to be moving towards us at a speed of 100 in the negative direction. So while we're rolling towards him, he's not that far off the screen, so actually you can just hit play. We can almost wait for him. All right, now that wasn't nearly as violent as we'd like it to be, right? It's kind of anticlimactic. So what can we do to make this bowling pin really fly off? Learned about this last time. Go ahead.
When they collide, change the velocity.
Okay, we can do that. But short of doing that initially. Last time we messed around with density. Remember that? Right now, these guys are the same density. But we want the bowling pin to be a lot lighter than the bowling ball, or the bowling ball a lot heavier, however you want to look at it. Go ahead.
Make the bowling ball more dense.
So how much more dense do you want to make it? What did we do last time? Did we make it like a 10 or something? 8? All right. So we'll go into our player. We're going to go to his density, and we'll make him 8, like we did last time. Okay, so now when we bump into a bowling pin, there should be some ramifications. A little bit better, but still kind of crappy. Well, part of the problem is we're going too slow. So now we can speed our dude up. So instead of him going at a speed of 100, let's have him go at a speed of 300 in the right direction. And we'll just make him go faster to the right now. All right, so a little bit better. But still not quite. We want to see this guy really fly up in the air. How can we do that? Well, if we change, let's just force it to happen real quick. Let's change our bowling or our pins bounciness back to 1. Now he's a little bit bouncy again, right? All right. Now, while it looked kind of Mario-esque having this bowling pin bouncing towards us, it was almost just a side effect that he was bouncing off the ground. Correct? But what if we only want to turn his bounciness back up to 1 after he's landed on the ground? I mean, one thing we can do is we can start him off on the ground. Okay? Which maybe isn't that big of a deal. But we want to mess around with rules and asking questions. So once he impacts the ground, could we change his bounciness to 1? So what we can do here, we can go into our bowling pin and we can create a rule. And we can say, I mean, he already has the behavior, from collide. Already has the collide behavior associated with the ground and the player. So he won't fall through those. But we're going to have a rule that says this actor overlaps or collides with an actor of type ground. When that happens, what do we want to do? We want to change an attribute. What attribute? We want to change our own physics bounciness to 1. And we're going to start that off at 0. So by default, it'll be 0. As soon as he hits the ground, it'll switch to 1. Okay? Now, this guy is an action. Change behavior, change attribute rather, is an action. So it'll only happen 1 time. It won't happen every single time he impacts the ground. Because if we, this is actually another advantage of a game engine, is your player is constantly interacting with the ground. So that event is constantly being triggered. So sometimes you can almost get like lag in the game because it's constantly asking that question every single time, and you'll have the guy kind of almost bouncing along the ground. That's what we would have if we didn't implement collide behaviors. Instead, we implemented a rule to detect the collision. So collide behaviors make it smooth as he's going along the ground. So now when he hits the ground, we'll change his bounciness back to 1 or to 1. We'll start it off at 0. So hopefully now he's not bouncing towards us. He's just sliding towards us. But It's actually funny. He still had his momentum this way, so we were fighting it at first. That's why it didn't look that violent. All right, now notice the bowling pin just kept going, right? It doesn't seem real reasonable. All right, so we hit this guy, and we're going to follow him. So if we think about this in real life, I run into this guy, he goes flying off. Now, he probably would stop sliding by now, right? Okay, now this is ice. Downhill ice is what it is. So we need to go back and we need to look at the friction associated with this guy. So he has a density, and right now his friction is 3. Let me actually just take it to 10. Already he's going slower, right? We've given here well, actually it's caught up to him now. He kind of drugged to a stop. We had his linear velocity of 100, but the friction between him and the ground was fighting against that. Come on, you can. Oh, I keep hitting him. That was my fault. I kicked him when he was down. Stop. All right. All right. So he stopped. So we saw the impact that friction had on him then. He didn't slow down as fast as we would have expected him to. Right? Now, the real question is when we started him going, he's moving now, but he actually screeches to a halt. Why is that? We set his linear velocity to negative 100, didn't we? We told him to go at negative 100. So that means that was his speed. But that friction is going to slow down your speed. We're not constantly bumping it back up to 100. It's an action. So it slowed it back down. We could set a timer that keeps bumping it back up. That would look stupid. But we could do it. And then he wouldn't slow down like that. Okay? Now, we don't want him to slow down when he's coming at us, right? We want him to keep going. So what we can do is we can leave his friction, what was the default, 3? Let's leave it at 3. But when this guy overlaps or collides, let's create another rule. When he overlaps or collides with an actor of type player, what we're going to do is we are going to change our friction to, let's say, 20. Which hopefully means he'll keep coming towards us at a reasonable speed, but when we bump into him, his friction will be 20, so when he lands on the ground, he'll drag to a stop more quickly than he did before. All right, so hopefully he'll just keep coming towards us now, just like before. Now we'll smack into him. Looks like we should have made it even higher than 20. We imparted a lot of physics onto him. Oh, come on. A lot higher than 20. I was rolling at 300. I think 500. It should slow them down. I think even more.
Or maybe make the friction for the ground.
We could make the ground sticky too, but that's actually going to affect us. That'll affect our guy as well. In our last minute. Well, so while I'm doing this one more time, so what I want you to do for Monday is start a new project, create your own game. We're going to be doing a platformer, so think Mario, but choose your own style. You can choose who your player is. You can choose who your one enemy is right now. And just give yourself a platform and get this working like we've done here. Make sense? So I'll put a Dropbox up, but for right now, let me give this guy a little more friction. Think that'll stop him?
Okay.
The problem is we've really made this guy pretty dense. It might be that we do have to make the grounds friction a little bit. Oh! Ah. I guess you can't fight physics. 50,000? At some point, this thing just has to screech to us. It like flips up and just. Nah, I think we do have to adjust the friction of the ground. The ground's not dragging it enough. All right, so that's your homework for Monday. I'll put it up on Angel here in a second, and then we'll go from there.